Hey there, so I'm coming up with another story reading video or audio, and I'll do a quick reading and review. I'll keep the video as or audio as short as possible, and do guess the name of the novel and the author and comment down below. And if you have any recommendations of what to read next, then do let me know, or what to review next. There are many good pieces coming on the OTT platform, which I'd like to review. First, I'll have to see it myself. So that is for later on. Maybe I'll post that next. But for today, I can also post some cooking videos and recipes. That is also for the later part. But for now, let's just dive in here. Okay, so I think I'm going to read two chapters today, chapter 3 and chapter 4. Like, I picked out random chapters from the novella, and I'm going to read it and review it. So, yeah, let's dive in. The Russian emperor had meanwhile been spending more than a month in Vilna, holding reviews and inspecting maneuvers. Nothing was in readiness for the war, which all were expecting, though it was to be prepared for it that the Tsar had come from Petersburg. There was no general plan of action. The vacillation between all the plans that were proposed and the inability to fix on any one of them was more marked than even after the Tsar had been for a month at the headquarters. There was a separate commander in chief at the head of each of the three armies, but there was no commander with authority over all of them, and the Tsar did not undertake the duties of such a commander in chief himself. The longer the Tsar stayed in Vilna, the less ready was the Russian army for the war, which they had grown weary of expecting. Every effort of the men who surrounded the Tsar seemed to be devoted to making their sovereign spend his time pleasantly and forget the impending war. Many balls and fetes were given by the Polish magnates, by members of the court, and by the Tsar himself. And in the month of June, it occurred to one of the Polish generals attached to the Tsar's staff that all the generals on the staff should give a dinner and a ball to the Tsar. The suggestion was eagerly taken up. The Tsar gave his consent. The generals on the staff subscribed the necessary funds. The lady who was most likely to please the Tsar's taste was selected as hostess for the ball. Count Minaisen, who had land in the Vilna province, offered his house in the outskirts for his fete, and the 13th of June was the day fixed for a ball, a dinner, with a regatta and fireworks at Zakrita, Count Binaisen's suburban house. On the very day on which Napoleon gave the order to cross the Niemen, and the vanguard of his army crossed the Russian frontier, driving back the Cossacks, Alexander was at the ball given by the generals on his staff at Count Benaisen's house. It was a brilliant and festive entertainment. Connoisseurs declared that rarely they had so many beauties gathered together at one place. Countess Bezouf, who had been among the Russian ladies who had followed the Tsar from Petersburg to Vilna, was at the ball. Her heavy Russian style of beauty, as it is called, overshadowing the more refined Polish ladies. She was much noticed, and the Tsar had designed to bestow a dance upon her. Boris Drubetskoy, who had left his wife at Moscow and was living in Garson, as he had said, at Vilna, was also at the ball. And although he was not a general on the staff, he had subscribed a large sum to the ball. Boris was now a wealthy man who had risen to high honors. He no longer sought patronage, but was on an equal footing with the most distinguished men of his age. At Vilna, he made Ellen, whom he had not seen for a long time. As Ellen was enjoying the good graces of a very important personage indeed, and Boris had so recently been married, They made no allusion as to the past, but met just as good natured old friends. So here I'm interrupting a bit. So the emperor, the Russian emperor, the Tsar, as we know, he has come to Vilna. Vilna is a province in Russia where they are putting in their views, inspecting maneuvers, and holding reviews for some impending war. They are expecting an attack from someone, and they are readying the army for that reason. And the Tsar, who is the emperor and also the chief of defense, he has also come to visit the headquarters here from Petersburg. And when he has come, it is the view of everybody that they are becoming less prepared for the war because everybody is busy uh, making the Tsar happy and making him forget about the impending war. And so they are arranging for balls and fetes and dinners. And he himself is also throwing parties everywhere so that they might have a better mood and a better time. So, according to me, if I put in my personal view, this is a good thing, and they are giving they're giving balls and fetes, and they have decided to arrange another fete at the urban house of Count Benison, who is a very kind count and has gladly given his land, uh, which is situated in the Vilna province, for this purpose. And June the 13th is decided to be the date on which the fete is to be held, and the noblemen, the staffs of the staffs of the court of the Tsar himself has subscribed the necessary funds required for the fete. And on the very day, we find out here also that Napoleon has given the order of his army, Napoleon Bonaparte, to cross the Russian frontier, and driving back the Cossacks, that is the border guards. They have crossed the Niemen, and they have entered Russia. So at that time, Alexander, a about whom we'll know later on, I think is part of the Tsar's court, or maybe part of the army. That person is at the ball. So this implies that when the ball is happening, when everybody is busy at the ball, then Napoleon coincidentally gave orders to the French army to cross the Russian frontiers and enter Russia without declaring any war. So, in this case, we see that the war that they were expecting is no petty war. It's no petty, the enemy is not petty. It's the French Napoleon Bonaparte, and he has just entered Russia. But our protagonist, or there's no one protagonist here, I mean, the Tsar and the people whom we are talking about, the Russians, the noblemen, the army people, they don't know about it yet. They are busy at the ball now. And it was brilliant and festive entertainment. Connoisseurs declared that they haven't seen such a ball in many a time. There were ladies also, beautiful Polish ladies. There were beautiful Russian ladies, and a certain Countess Bezov, whose beauty was beyond expectation. She also graced the ball, and the Tsar himself noticed her and decided to bestow a dance on her. Now we read about another protagonist here, who is Boris Drubetskoy. He has also risen to high ranks now through his work, and he has also, although he's not a member of the staff, he has also subscribed a large amount of money for the ball. So he is quite seen it at a higher place here, and he's also attending the ball at Vilna, and he has met Ellen. So Ellen may be her. Ellen is whom he has not seen for a long time, and probably his old friend, or maybe somebody more than his friend. But since this person has been married recently, and Ellen is seeing some people very high, someone uh, who is very much important and at a very high place. They did not made any allusion to their past and met as just good friends. So let's read on. At midnight, dancing was still going on. Ellen, happening to have no suitable partner, had herself proposed a mazurka to Boris. They were the third couple. Boris was looking coldly at Ellen's splendid bare shoulders, which rose out of her dress of dark gauze and gold, and was talking to her of old acquaintances. And yet, though others and himself too were unaware of it, he never for a second ceased observing the Tsar, who was in the same room. The Tsar was not dancing. He was standing in the doorway, stopping one person after the other with the gracious words he alone knew how to utter. At the beginning of the mazurka, Boris saw that a general of the staff, Balashov, one of the persons in closest attendance on the Tsar, went up to him and, regardless of court etiquette, stopped close to him while he conversed with a Polish lady. After saying a few words to the lady, the Tsar glanced inquiringly at Balashov, and apparently, seeing that he was behaving like this only because he had weighty reasons for doing so, he gave the lady a slight nod and turned to Balashov. The Tsar's countenance betrayed amazement. As soon as Balashov had begun to speak, he took Balashov's arm and walked across the room with him, unconsciously clearing a space of 3 yards on each side of him as people hastily drew back. Boris noticed the excited face of Arakchev as the Tsar walked up the room with Balashov. Arakchev, looking from under his brows at the Tsar and sniffing with his red nose, moved forward out of the crowd as though expecting the Tsar to apply to him. Boris saw that Arakchev envied Balashov and was displeased at any important news having reached the Tsar not through him. But the Tsar and Balashov walked out by the door into the lighted garden without noticing Arakchev. Arakchev, however, holding his sword and looking wrathfully about him, followed 20 paces behind them. So here we see that Boris was bestowed a dance by the pretty Ellen, who could not find a partner, and that's why she proposed mazurka, that is a dance on Boris. And Boris was dancing with Ellen and attentively, but his attention was somewhere else. He was actually looking at the Tsar, who was stopping every person in the doorway and uttering something, words of gesture, good words, kind words, welcoming words that he alone knew, but because he couldn't overhear them. And suddenly he saw that while the Tsar was talking very closely with the Polish lady, Balashov, disregarding the etiquette of the ball, was standing very close to them and was trying to interrupt them. And the Tsar also noticed that, and probably he understood that he had some mighty reasons for doing so. So he dismissed the lady and attended to him, and he gave some news, hearing which the Tsar really grew very excited and worried, and the two of them uh, ran, not paced very swiftly out of the ball and into the garden. And this was also noticed by another person, who is Arakchev, and who is the member of the staff, and who definitely had a very competitive nature, probably because he envied Balashov and was very displeased that some important news reached the ears of Tsar, not through him but through Balashov. And he frowningly followed them just 20 paces behind them. And while doing so, everything was watched by Boris. So let's now read on what they do. Boris went on performing the figures of mazurka, but he was all the while fretted by wondering what the news could be that Balashov had brought, and in what way he could find it out before other people. In the figure in which he had to choose a lady, He whispered to Ellen that he wanted to choose Countess Potocki, who had, he thought, gone out on the balcony, and gliding over the parquet, he flew to the door and opened the garden that opened into the garden, and seeing the Tsar and Balashov coming into the veranda, he stood still there. The Tsar and Balashov moved towards the door. Boris, with a show of haste, as though he had not time to move away, squeezed respectfully up to the doorpost and bowed his head. The Tsar, in the tone of a man resenting a personal insult, was saying, "To enter Russia with no declaration of war. I will consent to conciliation only when not a single enemy under arms is left in my country," he said. It seemed to Boris that the Tsar liked uttering these words. He was pleased with the form in which he had expressed his feelings, but displeased at Boris overhearing them. "Let nobody know of it," the Tsar added, frowning. Boris saw that this was aimed at him, and closing his eyes, inclined his head a little. The Tsar went back to the ballroom and remained there half an hour. Boris was the first person to learn the news that the French troops had crossed the Niemen, and thanks to that fact was enabled to prove to various persons of great consequence that much that was hidden from others was commonly known to him, and was thereby enabled to rise even higher than before in the opinions of those persons. So Boris was closely watching the pair of them running into the garden, and he gestured to Ellen like he wanted to change partner, and he wanted to choose Count Potocki, who had just gone out also to in the garden, the balcony, which opened the door into which opened in the garden, and he ran towards there while he was actually following them. And while he came near them, he squeezed in front of them as if he had no other way to back off, and he overheard the Tsar saying that very furiously that he will not consent to conciliation in any manner unless and until all the French people have gone out, all the French armed men have gone out of his country. And the Tsar, seeing that the Tsar was very pleased with himself while he uttered these words, but did not like Boris overhearing them, and uttered to him that he should not to him, he uttered generally that this news should not spread out to the others. But and Boris tilted his head, but he gave the news to all later on. Maybe he gave the news to the other people of consequence, saying that he knew it better, he knew it first before anyone else did it, and thus was enabled to rise higher in the opinion of others since they regarded him closer to the Tsar. Now let's read on. The astounding news of the French having crossed the Niemen seemed particularly unexpected, from coming after the months of uninterrupted expectation of it, and arrival at a ball. At the first moment of amazement and resentment on getting the news, Alexander hit on the declaration that has since become famous, a declaration which pleased him and fully expressed his feelings. On returning home after the ball at 2 o'clock in the night, the Tsar sent for his secretary Shishkov and told him to write a decree to the army and a rescript to the field marshal Prince Saltykov, and he insisted on the words being inserted that he would never make peace as long as one Frenchman under arms remained in Russia. The next day, the following letter was written to Napoleon Bonaparte. So, uh, this news greatly moved the Russian nobles and the Russian people, the members of the staff and the members of the court of Tsar. And once he reached home after the ball at 2 o'clock, after 2 o'clock, he called for his secretary and told him to write a decree to the army and a rescript to the French field marshal, and a declaration was made that will become famous later on in the form of a letter that was sent to the French General Napoleon, and the contents of it have been given here, which I'm going to read now. Monsieur Montferrat, I learnt yesterday that in spite of the loyalty with which I have kept my engagements with Your Majesty, your troops have crossed the frontiers of Russia, and I have this moment received from Petersburg the note in which Count Lauriston informs me, as cause of this invasion, that Your Majesty considers us to be in hostile relations ever since Prince Kurakin asked for his passport. The causes on which the Duc de Bassano based his refusal to give this passport would never have led me to suppose that the action of my ambassador could serve as a ground for invasion. And indeed, he received no authorization from me in his action, as had been made known by him. And as soon as I heard of it, I immediately expressed my displeasure to Prince Korakin, commanding him to perform the duties entrusted to him as before. If your Majesty is not inclined to shed the blood of your subjects for such a misunderstanding, and if you consent to withdraw your troops from Russian territory, I will pass over the whole incident unnoticed. An agreement between us will be possible. In the opposite case, I shall be forced to repel an invasion which has been in no way provoked on my side. Your Majesty has it in your power to preserve humanity from the disasters of another war. I am, etc., signed Alexander. So here, I think some of the French generals tried to get some passport in the Russian frontiers, which were denied by the Russian Cossack guards, the border guards. And this offended the French general, and this is what the Tsar or the court people are assuming, that this might be the reason for the invasion. Also, this could not be, because this is a very petty issue. So that is what they are writing, and they are giving a condition that they will put the whole thing unnoticed. They will pass over the whole incident unnoticed if the troops withdraw and not a single Frenchman armed remains in the Russian soil. Otherwise, they will have to retaliate. And signed. Yeah. So, yeah, we have come to the end of chapter 3. And do let me know in the comments if you want me to carry on to chapter 4 and chapter 5 and later on, or if you want me to read some other novel. And do comment the name of the novel and the author below if you have already guessed it, because it's a very famous one and known by almost everybody. So yeah, do let me know what to do next. Recommend any recommendations and anything, and let me know if you've enjoyed my story reading audio. Well, ciao for today.